you do when two YouTubers cover the same material? Why, you compare and contrast, of course. And because this is the internet, you have to take a stand on who did it better. Obviously, right? And obviously, you know, it's each to their own. But when you compare the conveying of information in an accurate manner, well, that is something that we can see if one channel did better than the other, objectively speaking. Get the obvious out of the way, we can see that both channels could do with more citations. And I'm not talking about Twitter quotes or whatnot. I'm saying it would be better if any channel that conveys information, be it something as trivial as comic book content or lore, that they show exactly where they acquired it, even if it is something like a Wikipedia article. So that means at the very least some sort of APA, MLA, Chicago, whatever they want to use when they put up a quote or something. That way, that people who want to double check their work can easily find it. Does that mean extra work for the creator? Yes, it does, but having a bibliography for a video essay should be more the norm rather than the exception. So, you know, maybe we can have a citation counter in the corner or something. Now we got the main objections out of the way, let's examine the content of the video, shall we? Before we get into the heart of it, do the YouTube thing, help feed the algorithm, and let's get started. Casually Comics started her own channel in June 4th, 2019. She appeared in the top 10 list channel before setting off on her own. I would describe her as someone who you can get as close to a comic book historian without getting the fancy degree. Now, the content she covers are comic book reviews and comic book commentary. It is unique, however, in that she covers many topics that would be considered pretty niche, even for the YouTube standards. And there's a lot of rabbit hole questions, such as the Taco Bell sponsored Marvel run, or the origins of certain memes, or, you know, her current list of Lois Lane marries this character. And it turns out that Lois Lane almost marries a lot of characters. Hooray, Silver Age. Now, overall, it is a fun channel whose tone invites discussion and pondering of some of the more ridiculous nature that is comic books, or as she says in her intro,
it's really wherever our whims take us.
Comic Drake apparently started out on October 25th, 2014. He has a history of being in YouTube for a little bit longer, apparently affiliated with the Game Theory channel. We can see numerous videos he has on his channel, is mostly commentary / explains kind of channel, and I imagine that if you match his videos with the trending topics, they will correlate quite nicely. No judgment here, as he does seem to do this for a living, which means, you know, he needs to maximize his income, and that's something that we can't fault him for. But it does show a more clickbait nature to his videos. But then again, clickbait is the name of the game for influencers, so that just means you gotta take his videos, essays, and put it under that umbrella, which means you take it with a grain of salt. Now, I don't follow his channel, but as the way the algorithm works nowadays, he does show up on my Twitter and my YouTube and my TikToks and whatnot, so I gave his video a look-see. And how much you get from him, you know, miles may vary, but I'll be honest, his stuff really isn't my jam. But since both channels cover the Powergirl from the starting point of the boob window, which is an iconic look for the character, so let's get into it. Comic Drake's video, which came out October 21st, 2021, is titled Powergirl's Boobs Are Stupid But Important. Casually Comics had 3 videos that came out a year and a half earlier. The titles are as followed: Powergirl, Questions You Are Afraid to Ask, May 6, 2020, Confusing History of Powergirl, May 8, 2020, and The Myth, the Legend, The Window, May 12, 2020. Both channels cover the first issue in which Powergirl debuted, which was All-Star Comics number 58 in 1976, an Earth 2 version. Credit to the creation of that character goes to Jerry Conway and Rick Estrada. Both mention Wally Wood, but only Casually Comics gives co-credit to Powergirl's creation to Wally Wood, who was the inker on the initial run. The background context in which Casually Comics focused on were more of the behind-the-scenes of the publication environment at the time, which was focused on this whole Marvel versus DC dynamic, where each company would come up with as many different heroes to copyright the names so the other company couldn't use them. I mean, this is what Stan Lee says about the whole thing. Comic Drake's video focuses immediately on the boob window issue, where we see different views from Jerry Conway with his Twitter quotes that stated that Powergirl wasn't originally meant to be sexy, and then the controversy of Wally Wood, the inker who was mentioned to have created the Disneyland Memorial orgy poster. You look it up, I'm not putting it up. Now, setting up the whole feminist-themed question of, is the boob window a good thing or a bad thing? He also cited the DC policy in regards to women characters. Have then an overview or summary of the character's inconsistent lore, as it seems to change every time when DC tries to reboot their characters to make some sort of chronological sense. Powergirl seems to be one of those characters that have been consistently inconsistent. Comic Drake shows an inconsistency through the variations of Powergirl's costume throughout the ages. You know, from her scoop neck in issue 69, Keith Griffin's version, Jared Jones, who brought back the boob window during his run, also mentioned that Jared Jones was arrested for CP, thus associating the boob window with the criminal. Also mentioning the Chris Claremont run that had a very similar story beat to his X-Men run that showcased an evil mind-controlled female in a skimpy outfit. Overall, we see an implied view that Powergirl should be covered up. I mean, he doesn't say it explicitly, but every time when Powergirl's revealing anatomy is mentioned, it is paired up with a negative fact, and that's not by coincidence. It ends with the view that Comic Drake is in favor of the boob window because it is iconic, but would happily take up changes to cover it up, which is about as fence-sitting of a conclusion one can come up with. Casually Comics' 3-part video has a vastly different tone from Comic Drake's. Video 1 is an overview of the controversy itself, a brief history and some background on the character, though both content creators, gave the reason for the bust size, which they said was due to Wally Wood. Only Casually Comics gave more of a background on who Wally Woods was. Instead of making him out to be some weird sex artist, we see that Wally Wood's art portfolio is more diverse than implied by Comic Drake. I mean, if Wally Wood isn't a good person or morally good because he drew sexy ladies, what does that make Olivia de Bernardini? She also addresses the debate in a more neutral manner, highlighting both sides of the debate for those who are in favor of the boob window and those who are against, as opposed to Comic Drake, who only showcased those who are against the boob window. Now, his video is about as anti-boob window as it comes, without saying he's anti-boob. He's almost like a politician that way, which doesn't make me want to, like and subscribe to his channel. But you should with mine, because I give it to you straight. Extra context regarding the debate is appreciated and doesn't give any value judgment for being for or against. In fact, it seems to be more interested in how the debate came to be. As for many people, they think that it is an urban legend on how the biggest bust size in the DC universe came to be. Now, from issue number 58 to issue number 64 and 65, Casually Comics noted a slight increase, but Comic Drake did not, though it should be noted that only Casually Comics mentioned that people may perceive things differently. After all, art is subjective. Now, one could nitpick each video and take a side, though if you do, I think you're simply watching for entertainment purposes. Now, I am personally of the view that Casually Comics has the more healthy attitude when it comes to female depictions in comics. She does recognize that it becomes a statement on whether or not a writer or artist chooses to present the boob window or the big bosom, or whether they choose not to. But that is only a quote-unquote decision to be made by those who we would call normies, basically the non-fans of the medium. Because instead of focusing on the character, her personality, or the stories she's in, all they can think about are the big boobs, thus reducing the character to simply having big boobs. Ironic enough, yes. I will also note that Casually Comics seems to have a bit more fun with their videos about the subject compared to Comic Drake. And it seems that Casually Comics took the time to read through the comics, noting the parts that she liked or found ridiculous, and part of the enjoyment of comics is to revel in the ridiculousness. Comic Drake's video was pretty passive-aggressively judgy. As stated before, every time when he mentioned the boob window or something sexy, we get a negative fact about the people who put it in. Now, for those who may object to that view, because hey, he put on a shirt with the hole cut out like Powergirl, thus is engaging in self-deprecating humor, so he's having fun too, right? Well, I think I found the gag pretty superficial, almost to distract from the fact that it's clearly on one side. I mean, why else would he say that a scoop neck is a good compromise, or leave out Amanda Connor's point of view or Gail Simone's view on the boob window? I mean, why would he connect Gerard Jones, a pedophile who brought back the boob window, in his video? What kind of statement is he making? The passive-aggressive nature and the clickbait nature really takes away from the information. But there is information there, just nothing about it should lead one to make a conclusion, since you're not getting all the relevant information for this debate. Finally, to conclude that this is a part of an overall bigger debate of female depictions within fictional mediums such as comic books and animation, movies, video games, basically any sort of visual medium that showcases fiction, and to say at the very least, the issue is complicated, but it can seem unnecessarily so. Mind you, nuance and context is key in issues such as feminism, and anyone who ignores that nuance and context, or even worse, cherry picks the nuance and context in order to come up with whatever conclusions they have, specifically a moral judgment against others, well, the latter is something I can do without. Plainly put, the more context is within Casually Comics videos, and that makes it more enjoyable and informative, and it's more fun too. And since it leaves us to make our own conclusions as opposed to Comic Drake's narrative-driven video essay, you can plainly see which content creator I feel has covered the topic better. Thank you for watching this video up to this point. I do appreciate it. Please help a YouTube content creator out by doing the algorithm thing, like, subscribe, do the whole stuff that they want you to do so channels can grow. Thank you, and I hope you are having a good day or good evening. Ciao, everybody.